All right.
All right, we're ready to go.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about Perot Systems, the different management eras. And
Right.
I call them eras because it was like 1940, 1950,
Right,
1960.
right.
And so the era that we've been talking about from probably 1989 to probably 92, in that neighborhood, 93 maybe, was the era of the founders. That's when the seven guys that Mr. Perot brought over from EDS were running the country. Some company somewhere in that period I'm talking about, 92, 93, Morton Myerson came on and became the chairman of Perot Systems. And Mort liked smart people. And so he hired a bunch of guys that were Mensa type people, had real high IQs, and were in data center or data processing and had all these great ideas that most of the time didn't work. But anyway, we had an era where these guys were there. Then
the era of the smart people.
Era of the smart people. And then we had, I don't know how long, that didn't last too long. It probably lasted until 94. Probably lasted in that period of time. And then we had the era of the generals. Mort had hired a 3-star general to run the company, and he brought with him a 2-star general, 2 brigadier generals, a couple of full colonels, a couple of majors. And they all come in and naturally have positions above the people who started Perot Systems.
Right.
And I was
probably got a bunch of equity too.
And they got a bunch of equity. And I was working for a gentleman by the name of Bill Harmon, who was a 2-star general. Generals weren't foreign to me. I'd spent 22 years of my life being commanded by generals, so no big deal. And they knew I was a command sergeant major, so they were happy.
Right.
I had no issues with the general era. Following the general era, this was got to be in 97.
That starting in 97?
Yeah, it was 96, 97. They bring in the number 3 guy from IBM, and I call it the IBM era.
Right.
And of course, we were flooded with ex-IBMers.
Right.
And so it's just a benchmark of where we were, and we can talk about those in any of the time frames that we've talked about. I've mentioned some of the interactions with the founders that I had, and almost always it was the founders asking me to go do stuff or pulling me out of something and send me someplace else initially. And then the smart guys didn't run anything. They were all about, let's build this and they will come. Well, that's not the way business works.
Right.
Build something of value and people will buy it. And so that's why I don't think their era lasted very long.
So they were gone pretty quickly.
Yeah, you had the generals come in.
Yeah.
And like I said, the generals they all had leadership skills and everything else, but they weren't business guys. And they're coming from the government. And they're coming from you get a general because of politics.
Right.
Congress nominates you to be a general. If that's not political, I don't know what is. Anyway, and then the IBM era, we had guys that the IBM, the number 3 guy at IBM, my understanding, was the one that screwed up the relationship between Microsoft and IBM.
At some point, that relationship ended.
Yeah, and this was this guy's fault.
They blamed it on him.
They didn't blame it on him. I think he actually thought that IBM could do more than it could do, and couldn't catch what Microsoft was doing.
All right. So then, kind of back to our timeline, you had just done project teams. You were working on building something to sell to large and small businesses.
Yeah, we would go to the large and small business and they would have projects
Right.
and we would bid the project. We could bring in resources to complete the project and you pay for it, so we go away. So you don't have to hire anybody and have severance and all this other stuff. You have a contract, contract's over, we're gone. Okay, we weren't building anything hoping somebody was coming.
All right. All right. So what after that? What are you doing after that?
I think this is like mid '94.
Right.
And I get a call from Mort Meyerson that says, "Hey, I have a friend in Germany. He's working for Siemens."
Right.
Schumacher had been a CEO of a company in Germany, and I forget the name. Nixdorf, who was a mini computer company, a German guy by the name of Nixdorf, had created this, and it was pretty state of the art at the time. And had he moved a little quicker, he probably could have captured the market. But he died. And in Germany, there's a lot of social issues around business, and so the German government went to Siemens and say acquire Nixdorf so we don't lose that skill set and we don't have to fire a bunch of people and lose the company that we have. So Siemens bought Nixdorf and they hired Schumacher to integrate Nixdorf into Siemens.
Right.
So the company was called Siemens Nixdorf that he was the CEO of. And
what they want from you?
Well, Mr. Schumacher had a vision of building a service company in Europe similar to what EDS and Perot Systems were. And him and Meyerson had known each other in the past, and so he reached out to Mort and said, can I get somebody from your company to come over and work with my team to put together a presentation to make to the Siemens board of directors and get authorization to try to build this company. And Meyerson knew that, I've been in Germany and my wife was German. He asked me if I'd go do it. And I said, yeah. And I think this is September
95, I think.
94, Jim.
94? Okay.
Yeah, I think this is September 94. And so Mom and I get in the plane and we go to Germany. Augsburg's 60 kilometers from Munich. So almost living with her sister. They had another apartment. We're both living there, and they put us up in the apartment. And I'm getting on the train every morning, going to Munich, Germany, working with the Siemens team to put together a presentation to present to the Siemens board.
Right.
And we probably take 4 months, 6 weeks to put together the presentation. And it's done, and I let Schumacher know that it's done, and he asked me to meet him at his hotel, whatever night that was. And he said, bring your wife, we'll have dinner and talk about the presentation. So I went up there and walked through the presentation with him. And then he said, I would like you to present it to the board. And I explained to Mr. Schumacher that although I speak German, I'm pretty fluent in the guest house, not so much in the business environment.
You can get around in a bar, but not in the boardroom so much.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he said, well, these guys speak better English than you and I do. I said, okay, I'll do the presentation. So I think it was the next day or a day later that I go up to Munich and go into the board of directors. And I don't know how many there were, 6, 7 guys sitting there. And I make a presentation. They question me and get through the presentation. Mr. Schumacher says, will you wait outside till we're done? I said, sure. So I don't know how long I waited, but he came out later on. He said, well, they approved the idea. And I said, well, great, congratulations. He said, but on one condition. I said, what's that? That you help us get it started. And I said, I may have issues with that. I said, I have no problem doing it. I'd be more than happy to do it, but I have some, financial issues related to Perot Systems that I don't want to forfeit.
You had stock that you didn't want to forfeit.
I didn't want to, okay, you're going to Siemens, so now your options are all gone.
Right.
He said, well, I'll talk to Mort. And come back a day or so, said, it's okay, you can, got a message from Mort, stay, do what they need to do, and we'll just keep doing what we've been doing in terms of vesting. And so I said, okay. So we lived in Augsburg. Of course, now I'm the acting CEO of Siemens Business Services, which is the name of the new company. and we get cranking out. I'm meeting with the German people. They're in Munich and Fürth and um, Munich, obviously Nuremberg, and we're trying to put all this together as how we're going to run as a company. And then you have multiple people in each position, and now I'm supposed to get it down to. I got two guys that are financial people. Which one's
Right.
going to be the financial person for Siemens business?
Right.
Well, I'm no fool, so I went to the CFO of Siemens, who was a bike rider, and
Right.
he liked that I spoke German with a Bayerish accent, and so he would help me. He helped me select the guy, and it said, there'll be pushback, but I'll take care of the pushback. So you go do this is why, and this is the right guy, and so I had a lot of help. It wasn't
Right.
me making decisions. I wasn't that stupid that I'm going to go out and, one day my secretary comes in the room, is all upset, and I said, "What's the matter?" She's got a death threat.
Who did?
I did.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. And that was, a little earlier. I don't know how many years earlier. The Red Army had killed some guy at Siemens. I don't think he was an American, but it was just some executive.
Right.
And I didn't open the mail because I'm not going to try to sit there and read German. So she opened the mail, read it, and brought it into me.
Right.
Put a note on it and told me basically what it was, but she was all upset. And she had called security, so security comes over, starts talking to me, and they want to do all kinds of stuff. And I said, let's go slow. And then I told the secretary that I want to go to every spot that is part of Siemens Business Service and talk to all the employees in those locations. Can she set that up for me? And she said yes. And she got me a gal who now is working for the company,
Right.
was very fluent in English, and she was German. And she would go along because if I get in a position where I was not able to communicate,
Right.
she would
Help you
help
out.
me communicate. So I went and talked to everybody in the, told them this is not my company, this is your company. I'm here for a short period of time.
Right.
They believed I was a Scientologist. I said, I'm not a Scientologist. You guys all know Scientologists are smart. That's not me. So after that, it sort of I was accepted
Right.
as the guy that was here to try to help them do what they wanted to do with their company. And so we did that until.
That's bizarre. So they thought you were some kind of
I don't know.
Scientologist or devil worshiper or something.
Exactly.
Huh?
Yes. Oh, I was in the death threat. I was barbaric. I was an American and I was barbaric.
Barbarian.
Yeah. Anyway, we during that period of time, I was also riding a lot of bikes with my brother-in-law, Addy. Always rode past a place where a guy owned German Shepherds. Talked to him about one day getting one of his dogs, and he said, "Yeah, when you're ready to get a dog, call me." In about the October time frame of 1995.
Right.
Nowhere's going back. We're going to go home on New Year's Day on 1996.
And is that because the company was now running like it's supposed to?
The company, they had fired somebody inside Siemens to become the CEO, the full-time CEO permanently. Right. I was going to work with him for several months, and then, he was going to go ahead and run the company. So I went by, and the guy said, "I have a litter. Come by, and we'll pick the dog you want."
What was that guy's name?
Sites.
Okay.
Um,
and tell about like where you like you had a farm or something.
Yeah, it was a farmer. He was a farmer, and it's a town between Augsburg and Munich.
Right.
And we'd ride bikes past there all the time, and a lot of times his dogs would always be out, but he'd be out there with his dogs. And when he was out there, I'd stop and talk to him about it. And he had breeded German Shepherds since 1949. And when you do Schutzhund trials, right, you need a helper, and he was the guy who would always do the helper work.
So he knew what he was doing.
He knew German Shepherds, and the dog that he had mated his female with was a world champion. Alk Arlette was the dog's name.
Right.
And everybody who knew German Shepherds knew who Art Arlett was. Anyway, I went out and picked the pup. He picked the pup up that I picked, and he cut the hair out in a pattern that he would recognize. Said, 2 months, come pick your dog up, and she's ready to go. I think it was 27th, 28th of December. I picked the pup up, and on our way back to the United States, they gave me a small kennel. I said, my dog's not riding in that kennel. The main stewardess came out and said, give me a few minutes, and came back out and said, the captain said the dog can ride in the cabin. We were flying back first class, compliments of Siemens. And
I bet that was a nice trip.
Yanka was the dog's name.
Mm-hmm.
She laid on the floor right between Mom and I. We got back beginning of 1996.
Let's take a detour here.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with Perot.
Okay.
Tell us what you did with. We got a little time on this. We're going to start part 4 with Perot next time. But what you did with the dog in terms of training, and where she started and where she ended up.
Okay. So she's 2, 3, 4 months old, and I'm looking to do something with the dog, having talked to sites. I've heard about the sport of Schutzhund, and Yanka was just a beautiful German Shepherd. And there's a fireman here in Plano who was training dogs over in the ball fields. And somebody had told me about him. I don't remember who, and maybe PetSmart or Petco or something. And I went over there, and he knew a little bit about training dogs. And so I started training Yanka with him. And come to find out, she's a very smart dog. You didn't have to tell her, ask her to do something more than a couple of times, and she knew what you wanted and would do it for you. And doing a lot of reading, I'd bought a book from a dog trainer who's a German guy who lived in Florida. I bought his book, and I was reading his book about how you train your dog. And his training method was inducive, never compulsive. Don't hurt your dog. Don't beat your dog. Don't, ask your dog to do it, reward them for doing it, and they'll do it every time you ask them to do it. And so I started doing that with her. And then through training with this guy, I meet some people that are doing Schutzhund. And I go out and watch what they're doing and their training. And one of the guys alleges he's a real good dog trainer. And so I went out with him a couple of times, not so much, but I got to meet a couple other people. I got to meet a kid by the name of Todd West, who turned out to be the helper at the world competition, Schutzhund World Competition. It was held in Boston in 90 something.
Right.
And another guy from South Africa, Gary Grossi. And he had a Rottweiler. Todd had a German Shepherd, and Todd was married. His wife had a German Shepherd, and they belonged to a club that was out in Little Elm. And so I started training with them. Well, now I got a guy who really knows how to do Schutzhund, and that's Todd.
Right.
And at the same time, because Todd was so good at handling dogs for bite work, I got introduced to a lady by the name of, oh God, I can't remember her name. She had a dog. She lived in Salina. Her husband was
Job.
Yeah, Kathy Job was her name. Yeah. She had a world champion Schutzhund dog. It won the world champion twice. Now, Kathy Job was about 5 foot tall. And when her dog sat beside her, he was almost as tall as she was. And she would invite Todd out to do bite work with her dog. And so Todd took us out, and I met her. She's a nice lady, knows all about Schutzhund. And so I got to be introduced to people who knew how to train dogs and were world-class trainers and new stuff.
Right.
And so I a couple of years, 3 years, in that period, I got cancer, and I had to have surgery. So Utah, when I couldn't train the dog, Yuta stepped in and was training them with those
Right.
guys. And so about 3 years, we're Schutzhund II level.
Right.
And you only go to Schutzhund III. And Yanka was just a smart dog. Most of the guys had male dogs.
Right.
And one day somebody had a full bite suit. And we got the idea, let's put obstacles in front of this guy and see how long it takes the dogs to get to him. So we had one way where he could get in. It was sort of like a dugout
Right.
on the field. All fences were around it, but we built it so you could get in. And of course, Yanka had to go last because she was a female. And you would see these male dogs run there, and they try to go through the fence, go over the fence. It would take them a while before, and sometimes you had to coax them to get into where they could go in and get their bite. And so it was my turn, and we're 50 yards away maybe from where it is. And I knew how Yanka did things. And so she started and her ears were up. And I knew, and she wasn't running real fast, sort of a trot. And I knew when her ears are up, she's thinking, okay, her ears dropped and she's hauled ass and went right through the
figured it out.
Yeah, she figured out before she got there. She had that guy, 2 seconds, bang. I just told him, yeah, that's what you get for having stupid males.
Did you guys ever take her to a 3?
Yeah, she was Schutzhund III. Yeah, she was Schutzhund. I mean, we took her out the one time, Jim. It had just rained prior to the meet, and I had boots on, and I would go down in the mud on tracking. I'd go down 6 inches in the mud, and her paws would go down there. She tracked, got a 99 on the track. And you have to lay down and mark an item on the trail too hard. She did the whole thing.
So how long did it take you from time you got her from puppy to Schutzhund III?
Probably 4 years, 5 years. I mean, that probably could have went faster, but I was learning how to train a dog. I made mistakes.
You're still working too.
Yeah, I work part of the time. Part of the time I wasn't working. Okay. But we would, with her, I would run with her in the morning because I was running then.
Right.
And she'd be off leash. And all I had to do was say here, and she'd be right beside me. I mean, she wouldn't go. She'd run around and do stuff, but if I recalled her, she came right back to me. And then if I wasn't here, Mom would walk her a couple of miles in the afternoon. And then if I was working and I got home 6, 7 o'clock, we'd go train. And after I'd met Todd and Gary, we'd go out and train with them. And on weekends, we'd go out to Farmer's Field, lay tracks and track the dogs, and go to Little Elm Place. There was 5 acres out there, and train the dogs. Yeah, no, that was fun. That's where I learned patience.
Training the dogs, huh?
Well, you have to be patient.
Yeah. All right. Part 4 next time.
Okay.